Hello and welcome back to the Eyes of O Gaming channel for another game review. So today we're getting back to the basics with a first-person action-adventure game. So quickly, just before we get started, I wanted to give a really big thank you to everyone though. The channel has crossed over 2,700 subscribers, and obviously this wouldn't happen without you. So thank you so much for supporting the channel. Today we're looking at Valley, a game which was developed by Blue Isle Studios and published by Blue Isle Publishing. This one released in 2016, so we're going to go through the game, what it is, and how it looks, how it handles, and try to determine if the game holds up for the first-time player in a story spoiler-free way. Hopefully I can help you answer the most important question we always ask on the channel: is this game worth it for you? Let's find out. Time periods in this game and when it takes place are a little bit confusing. Based on the intro video with its cassette tape answering machine, the computer, and touch-tone phone, my guess is that in the game the player is contemporary to a time set sometime in the 1980s. That said, the technology which is the central part of the game feels really futuristic, but it was also apparently developed during World War II. So, like I said, trying to pinpoint the time period is a little bit confusing in this one. Aside from the time period, the game takes place in a remote location in the Canadian Rockies. Essentially, the game is an action-adventure, with the story itself being more of a mystery that is being unraveled as you play through. So what is this mystery? Well, it's all linked to Pendulum, which is essentially the research and development organization behind the so-called Leaf Suit, which is what you'll be using as one of the central gameplay features, and I'll talk about that a bit more in mechanics. Pendulum is also deeply associated with the mysterious area and the source of energy that's located there, which the energy is essentially what makes this futuristic style tech work. As you play through, you're not going to be actively solving this mystery, it's more just the storytelling device which is used and revealed to you as you play through the game. As far as similar games go, I don't have a ton of first-hand experience with things to recommend. I've heard many comparisons to A Story About My Uncle, which also gives the players an advanced suit with unique abilities, focusing on exploration as well. From what I've seen, it does look fairly similar, so I think the comparison is valid. I hate to do this because I've been using it as an example a lot of times, but from games I've personally played, the only one that came to mind was Firewatch. And really the only reason this one felt similar is due to it being another first-person perspective game with narrative focus and featuring a bunch of exploration in a natural setting. Aside from that, the gameplay itself is going to be totally different, so it's not a great comparison, but it's all I've really got for you today. As I mentioned, Valley is a first-person action-adventure game. The main gameplay mechanic is going to be the Leaf Suit, or Leap Effortlessly Through Air Functionality Suit. The suit itself is what a lot of the game is built around and gives the player different abilities such as enhanced speed when running, the ability to jump high, double jumping, magnetic walking on surfaces, and a grappling hook. Aside from those more obvious active abilities of the suit, we also have life and death manipulation. So this is going to be seen in a couple different ways, such as if the player dies, you will respawn, but certain parts of the valleys, such as trees or other plant life, will suffer and be killed in order to keep the balance. You can also revive organic things like trees, plants, and animals, but again, you'll need energy from somewhere in order to do this. A big part of the game revolves around exploration. Exploration of the natural environment can lead to collecting different things like golden acorns, which are used to open blocked pathways, or you can also find upgrades for the suit itself. This is a heavily story-driven game, but the story is told through a ton of notes, as well as audio clips of people that have been there previously. So it's one of those games where none of the story is really told in real time, it's mostly going to be from going back during the research times. Now, I know I also compared to Firewatch earlier, but unlike Firewatch, there is going to be some combat in this game. If you were checking out this game because you were looking for something in the action-adventure without combat, then don't get scared off though, as it's all extremely basic or straightforward, and it really does not involve much skill. I would say you're typically not going to be respawning due to the combat in the game, but instead it's going to be due to the platforming or jumping over holes or using the grappling hook, something more like that, an environmental reason. There aren't going to be any NPCs in the game, so the graphics are basically just the environments. The environments themselves also aren't going to have a ton of variation. You've basically got the environmental natural spaces, ruins, and facilities. Now, as always, the quality of the graphics are going to be pretty subjective, and so you can make up your own mind based on what you're seeing in the video. However, to me, it just felt like the graphics seemed like stock gaming graphics. Somehow this is a game that's mostly about nature and its beauty, and yet the spaces in it feel like a generic asset pack, and it kind of felt like things were just placed around instead of someone taking the time to craft unique spaces for the game. Which is kind of what I would expect from a game that's supposed to be so focused on the environment. I usually try to keep all my opinions until the very end of the review, but I just wanted to bring it up while we're talking about graphics. Like I said though, this is going to be personal opinion mostly, so just use your own judgment to see if this works for you. In terms of the unique features in this one, well, it's a story-driven adventure game, but all of the story is told through notes and audio clips like I said earlier. This means you're not going to have NPCs or other characters popping in real time to give you story. Instead, this one feels more like an old unsolved mystery that you're picking over and learning as you go. The life and death mechanics though do feel pretty unique to the game, though they somehow feel like they're just not quite that fleshed out. When the player respawns, some of the value is going to die for the player to actually do the respawn, but really this is extremely easy to fix. Energy seems to be extremely abundant, and you can just revive the trees or plant life really easily, so there isn't a lot of consequence to needing to respawn, even though the game sort of implies that there is. Looking into bugs, well, there's a ton that I ran into while playing. I fell through the ground into oblivion multiple times, and lots of other graphical weirdness. Even worse than that is the landscape design in some areas. I'm not sure if you can technically label this as a bug, as it's more just poor design, but it was extremely frustrating, so I want to mention it anyway. Basically, if you get stuck in the environment, you're restarting the area, which can sometimes happen once you're quite a ways in, and can be very frustrating to have to redo. The sound in the game seems okay. Interacting with things or using tools and abilities, the sounds all seem pretty standard. The soundtrack actually felt pretty hit or miss to me. In some places it was actually quite good, but in others I felt like the soundtrack or background music was just off-putting and took me right out of it. Voices for audio clips seemed to be done pretty well and actually tended to be the high point for sound in the game. As always though, I'll play some examples here for you so you can make up your own mind on the sound in the game.
Pathfinder program. As a Pathfinder, you will be tasked with operating and testing the newly developed Leaf suit.
Audio Journal, June 4th, 1941. Shortly after the outbreak of war in Europe, I was enlisted by the Army to study the history of this valley. The mysterious forest sprites seem to be the last living remnants of the long-lost culture that once...
And now with the general look at the game done, let's get into opinions and subjective territory. I'll keep this short, but I just want to mention a couple things. If you've seen other reviews on the channel before, you know the deal, but for new people, I don't want you to come into this expecting a number rating or something like that because I don't believe in them. The point of the review is just to show you the game and let you decide for yourself, because not everyone is going to enjoy every single game out there, and your experience is going to be subjective and personal. So all that said, now that I've gone over the game in general, I'm just going to talk about it a bit and my own experience for those interested, but keep in mind that whether I enjoyed it or not isn't going to mean that you will or won't. Instead of going based on my opinion, you should base your decision on whether to give it a try or not based on the breakdown done in the first part of the review. Did I enjoy Valley?
Nothing is as good as it should have been.
So, personally, this just felt like a really boring game to me. I sincerely apologize if you enjoyed this game, and I'm not making a comment on you, just how I personally felt about the game. It seems like they had a really good idea here, but it just fell short in the implementation. I honestly don't even really know what they're going for. The game wants to focus on environment and nature, but the environments feel kind of generic. It does have its moments, but it just wasn't what I expect from this kind of a project. Sometimes you get those indie games that the gameplay is terrible, but the environments, you can tell somebody really put some passion and time into it. That just didn't come across here for me. Honestly, I had more whoa moments taking in the environments in something like Skyrim, even today, and that game came out a good 5 years before Valley. I might be coming across as harsh, but honestly, I didn't find much else in this game to redeem it. There are puzzles, but the puzzles aren't puzzling enough for it to be a puzzle game. There's combat, but the combat isn't engaging enough or interesting enough for it to be a combat game. There's a lot of story, but the story didn't feel intriguing enough for it to be a strong story-focused game. And as I mentioned, the environments are okay, but they just aren't beautiful enough or have that handcrafted feel for this to feel like an environmental graphical experience. I think why I was let down so much is because I felt like there was a lot of good ideas in this game, but everything seemed to be done in a bland or mediocre way, and it just doesn't have any part that feels overly strong. Comparing this to Firewatch, like I mentioned earlier, in that game it was a story-driven experience, and even though the story might have been a bit cliche in some ways, it was told in an intriguing enough way that I stayed interested the whole way through. This one, the overall story is also fairly cliche, basically nature good, tech bad, but the presentation of it just didn't hold me the same way. This one is also a pretty short game, maybe 6 hours or so, but really that's not too uncommon for these type of story-driven games, so if you're into them, you probably expect that anyway. This one's actually also reviewed pretty positively by players, and I can see why. It's a casual experience you can just cruise through, and running and jumping can be fun. But looking at the entire thing, I personally just wasn't that impressed. But who knows, if you liked what you saw, you should definitely give it a try, as my opinion doesn't mean you're going to like it or not. Like I said, this one is a casual, environmentally focused, story-driven experience, with plenty of running and jumping, platforming in a first-person perspective. So if all that sounds like your kind of thing, this might be a great one to check out. I hope you enjoyed this look at Valley. Have you already played through this one? Let me know down in the comments what you thought, and if you agree or disagree with my own opinion. If the video was helpful or entertaining, please give me a like here, as it really helps me out a lot, and consider subscribing to the channel. I post a bunch of different gaming content, not just reviews but also walkthroughs and other gaming content, and would love to have you join the community and help direct the future of the channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today, and until next time, take care.
Welcome to the Pathfinder program. As a Pathfinder, you will be tasked with operating and testing the newly developed Leaf suit as our hard-working scientists at Pendulum develop new ways to empower our troops fighting the war in Europe. With the power of the Leaf suit, you will be able to perform unimaginable feats. Leaping high into the air. Sprinting as quickly as a cheetah. Even manipulating life and death itself are part of the many stunts accomplished by the Leaf suit. In addition to these marvelous wonders, an audio reel recorder built directly into the suit allows a Pathfinder to conveniently listen to important intelligence, hands-free during training exercises. And don't forget to keep an ear out for new upgrades available for your suit, as our scientists continue looking for new ways to improve the fearsome might of the Leaf suit.